So you may be wondering, what is title splitting? We keep going on about this. What is title splitting? Well, the first thing is it's been around for a long time. In fact, since the 17th century. And it was how wealthy landowners kept generational wealth, because they would create leasehold buildings on their land, which was called the freehold, and they would sell off the leasehold buildings, but through ground rents, service charges, and lease renewals, they could pass on wealth through the generations to their family. So that's where it originally started from. However, some of the things about leasehold have remained the same for such a long time. And actually now we're in 2024, we've got something called the Leasehold Reform Act that is changing things. So let me tell you what it is first. So the freehold is the land in which a building sits on, okay? So it can be the land. So we've got a house on a piece of land, and below it is the ground, that is the freehold. And often in things like apartment buildings, it's the airspace above your head that is also part of the freehold, okay? Now, when we talk about leasehold, which is title splitting, is breaking away the leasehold from the freehold, or it can be creating two lots of freehold from one lot of freehold. So I'll give you an example of that. You buy a piece of land, you build one house on one side of the land, you build another house on the other side of the land, and you title split it to create two separate freeholds. That's one type of title split. Another type of title split is where we have freehold and leasehold, and let me explain how this works. Freehold, as we said, is the land that the building sits on. Or in an apartment block, it will also be the shared areas like the hallways, the gardens may be shared, certainly the pathway up to the front door to come into the apartment building. Then the hallways, the lift areas, the roof space is probably part of the freehold, okay? And the roof is the freehold. The leasehold are the individual apartments that are inside the building, and they are separate units. Now, in today's society, it is those separate leasehold units in an apartment building or a mixed use building, because that can mean commercial property as well, or even in a commercial building. It's the individual units that have the value. Now, this is a big change that has been driven by something called the Leasehold Reform Act. Now, there are two parts to this. I'm going to talk about the first part that happened in 2022. These wealthy landowners in the past could charge what they wanted for ground rent. And now the restrictions with ground rent really come when mortgage companies are looking at this. And I'm going to say, if you're somebody who has a leasehold flat and you have a ground rent that is over £250 per annum, you may struggle to get a mortgage on it because the bank won't like that, okay? Now, in 2022, in the Leasehold Reform Act, it meant that now, from that date, the most new apartment buildings, and I do new apartment buildings, and a lot of our clients do new apartment buildings, we can only charge, guess what? 1 peppercorn. Yes, that's right, 1 peppercorn in ground rent. That is really a peppercorn. We cannot charge any money for it. In actual fact, it is 0, okay? So it's 1 peppercorn for the ground rent. So we don't want to be turning up with a peppercorn at the solicitors. So it's a virtual peppercorn, okay? And now that means that the properties are becoming imminently more mortgageable if the other conditions are right. Now, the other thing is there's a second part to the Leasehold Reform Act, and that is in 2024. In fact, it's happened on the 20th of May, 2024. And that means in the future, leases used to be 99 years, maybe 125 years on a block of apartments. Leases can now only be granted with a minimum term of 990 years, right? Have you heard that? Now, the great thing for us at TitleSplit.com is we've been teaching our clients to do this for the last 5 years. But here's the thing, all property investors will now have to make sure, all landlords when they're creating leases, all developers who are creating leases, your solicitor needs to create leases for 990 years. Now there's something else that's affected here, because the other thing is when we get to a certain point in a lease, and usually this is around 80 years, it becomes unmortgageable, right? And some of the old leases were only 90 years, so you can see how this worked. And this meant that people who owned a leasehold property would have to go and ask for a lease extension. Well, the good news for you people is that when you go and ask for this lease extension next time and you negotiate it, the Leasehold Reform Act means that the minimum term that can be granted to you for the extension of your lease is going to be 990 years, right? So this means you won't ever have to pay that extension again in your lifetime, and so on and so forth and so on. So it's 990 years. So this is going to be great for mortgageability. The other thing is that the Leasehold Reform Act is going to make it easier for leaseholders to challenge and buy the freehold together, to club together all the leaseholders to buy the freehold of the building. I don't think personally this is where it's going to stop, but that is what title splitting is about. I'm going to tell you now what's in it for you. If you buy a building that has apartments in it, or it has commercial property and apartments, right? Or it's a commercial building that you're converting to residential and you are a property investor, there is a great big uplift opportunity if you title split during ownership. Now, traditionally, property investors have only title split on sale, which means they leave a lot of equity in the property if they're holding it for cash flow. I hope that makes sense. Please come and talk to us at TitleSplit.com and find out how to do this properly, because you can get 25 to 35% capital uplift by doing so.